everybody, and welcome to my channel, The Existential Empath. So what I want to cover on this channel is basically anything from energy to healing to empaths to metaphysical to crystals to universe to spiritual awakening to extraterrestrials, all this really fun stuff that we go through as we begin to go through our spiritual awakening process. And let me tell you, it's been a rocky road. It hasn't been the most exciting. Well, I lie. It has been very exciting, but it hasn't been the most happiest of moments, I would definitely have to say. So I wanted to definitely talk about all these different topics and just be really free and open with it. And I want to meet other people who are going through this process too, because part of the spiritual awakening process is being very alone, or feeling very alone. So as we go through this, we have a hard time connecting because we are raising our vibration. We are moving through these different frequencies. We are stepping out of the matrix. We are learning what the matrix is. And we are stepping out of that 3D illusion, stepping into a more 5D, but we're going through the 4D, right? So it's just a lot. And if you can't talk about it with your friends or your family, then there's not many people out there that you can talk about it with. So I kind of wanted to create this channel as a means to share some of the things that I've been going through and to also open it up to other people who can connect. So I want this channel to be uplifting. I want it to be high vibe. I want it to be positive, and I want it to be able to expand our consciousness and our awareness of what the heck is going on in this universe, right? There's so much going on. So I look forward to learning with all of you, right? Learning and healing and moving through this wild spiritual awakening journey. So I will just end this video with sharing my story very briefly on my personal spiritual awakening journey. So like I said, it has not been a smooth sailing road. It's been quite rocky for me. I would say I started my spiritual awakening around 2010 when I went through a divorce. I had been married for nearly 10 years. I was married into a very Southern Baptist family. Now, I didn't grow up Southern Baptist. I kind of grew up going to church with my grandmother in Western New York, and it was very Methodist. And we would just go on the holidays or whatnot. But my parents were kind of like, you know what, we're not going to tell you which church to go to. We just want you to figure it out yourself. So I had a very open-minded family when it came to that, and I really am grateful for that. So of course I had experienced many different religions throughout the course of my life. Like I said, I went to a Methodist church with my grandma, but my town was primarily Catholic. So most of my friends were going to a Catholic church. So they would come to school with the ashes on their head. And I didn't really understand what was going on. I just knew that they would, go to church on Sundays, and they would stand up and sit down, and there was priests there. And I didn't really understand, much about that religion. So fast forward to, getting married, and I got moved from Western New York to Florida, and I fell in love with a man who was Southern Baptist. And in this particular family, it was very much his mom stayed at home and tended to the family, and the dad went to work. And I grew up in a family that was totally not like that. I grew up in a family where my dad was throwing an apron just as much as my mom would. It was just whoever made it home first was the one cooking the meal. And we'd always joke because my dad would always make spaghetti, and we would be like, oh, Dad's home first. Yuck, we got to eat spaghetti. So it was kind of a joke, but that was really the only thing my dad knew how to make other than stew, right? So, but I totally grew up in a family where the gender roles were kind of meshed, and then I married into a family where there were very, very distinct gender roles. And I had a hard time with that because I was a very strong woman. And so that marriage had lasted for about 10 years. And when I got out of that marriage, I started going through my spiritual awakening. I started to detox myself. I began to lose weight. I was, hitting the gym, and but as I was going through that, I began to emotionally release a lot of stuff. I was trying to put myself out there on the dating scene online, and that was just not pretty. I was meeting other people. I was attracting other men into my life that were broken just like me, because I hadn't taken the time to heal myself in between my marriage and the time that I was dating others. And so I was meeting a lot of broken people, and it was causing me more and more and more pain. So it wasn't until probably 2015 where I stopped dating people and I started to heal myself. But I wasn't really healing myself on an emotional level. I was healing myself more on a physical level. I started detoxing, eating more organic foods, learning about GMOs, and, awakening myself to all of the contaminants, I guess, in our food supply. I started, eliminating fluoride out of my diet. I started learning about the pineal gland and how to activate that. And then, I started traveling around the world and meeting new people. And it really was a time for me over the course of those 2 to 3 years of expansion. I was expanding my awareness. I was expanding my consciousness. And then around 2017, I had a meltdown. I just had a breakdown. I was working in a job at a hospital for 20 years, working in a trauma center around grieving families. And I was picking up everybody's stuff. And I went to, like I said before, I went to this energy healing conference, and I learned about what an empath was. And then I started on this energy healing journey that led me to EFT tapping, the emotion code, Bach flower essences, Reiki, all of these different things. And this was a new area of healing for me. I wasn't really familiar with this area of healing. So I started to really go down this path, crystals, and I was enjoying it, really enjoying it. And I began to shed a lot of emotional layers from not only myself, but from my ancestors, from my generational lineage of carrying these patterns, these subconscious patterns, these lower vibrational emotions that were no longer serving me. And then around 2019, I was so fed up with the matrix. I couldn't handle it anymore. I literally walked in one day, quit my job, and moved across the country. I moved from Florida to Washington State, and it has changed my life, absolutely changed my life. So I felt like where I was at in Florida, I was in a very low vibrational state. And as I was beginning to energetically shift my vibration, my frequency, it wasn't resonating with me anymore. I wanted to spend more time in nature. I wanted to see nature. I wanted to see the mountains every day. I wanted 4 seasons. I wanted a lot of these things in my life that I was not experiencing in Florida. So I began to shift my energy. I started my own business. All of these changes happened in 1 year. In 1 year. It was insane how much all of this stuff happened. And I truly feel it was because I began to clear my energy. I began to shift my vibration. Wild oat, Bach flower is very potent. That slowly began to shift me through my journey, through my transition. And then once I moved out to Washington, I began to be really, really curious and very interested in what's going on in our universe. So I started to dabble more into Dolores Cannon, QHHT, learning a lot more about extraterrestrial life, learning more about disclosure, listening to Corey Good and David Wilcock, learning more about what we call conspiracies that may not be conspiracies, all of this stuff. So I started to go down the rabbit hole. And many of you probably are very familiar with, when you go through your spiritual awakening, going down that rabbit hole, because there's not just one, right? You just keep going and diving and diving and diving and diving. And then you got to pull yourself out of that rabbit hole, because it can be so consuming and so overwhelming. So that's kind of where I am today. And then, about 6 months ago, I decided that Washington wasn't for me, and I moved across the border to Idaho. So that's where I am now, and I couldn't be happier. My back, when I moved to Washington, I had for about 6 months, very, very, very severe back pain. And it really just came down to me being out of alignment with where I needed to be. So the moment that I started to emotionally release those trapped emotions of feeling unsupported, moving across the country alone, and putting myself out there, not feeling financially stable as I had been before because I quit my job. The moment that I shifted my energy from Washington to Idaho, it was like a lot of things just started to feel better, you know? So I started to emotionally feel supported. I started to energetically feel more in alignment with where I wanted to be. When I moved to Washington, I first moved into the city, and I didn't want that. I wanted to be in nature. So when I moved to Idaho, I moved into nature, and it's been such a blessing, and I'm so grateful for that experience. But I also met people when I was in Washington that helped me heal through that journey. So there was a reason. There's always a reason that you're in that place at that time. Okay. So I can't say, oh, it was a mistake. It was a mistake that I moved to Washington, because it wasn't, because it helped me along my journey, and it helped me transition to that next level on my awakening process. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I wanted to share my story briefly, with you guys. And I hope that you can share some of your stories below in the comments, because, like I said, it's lonely being on the top here in this high vibe, moving into this 5D reality. And I know it's just a matter of time when we all begin to connect, because when we wake up to realizing that we're empaths, that we're light workers, that we're star seeds, that we're way showers, whatever it may be, we will soon begin to magnetize to each other. We will soon begin to see each other's light, and our light will begin to meld and mesh with one another. And I truly, truly feel that part of this process is that we learn who we are on our own, and then we begin to connect with one another. And when we connect with one another, our light becomes brighter and brighter and brighter. And we all, are so concerned on how do we heal the world? How do we heal the world? Well, we've got to heal ourselves first. And then once we heal ourselves, we attract others who have healed themselves. And then we shine so bright that we begin to heal others through that process. And so as we begin to do that, it just grows and grows and grows. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, and I look forward to hearing some of your comments about your own spiritual awakening process and your own journey. So I hope you all have a great day, and I send you so much positive energy.